All right, it looks like we've got a pretty good mix here. So that's great. I'll try to keep it as kind of generic and general as I can, but yet also try to get into some of that stuff. And so hopefully you can get something out of it. Um, but I think I'll go ahead and get started because I do have quite a bit to share with you, and 50 minutes is going to be kind of pushing it. So just to tell you very quickly and briefly about myself, my name is Rick Meyer. I'm a principal, an elementary principal in Sidney, Nebraska. If you've never been to Nebraska, you've probably flown over it on your way to somewhere cool or drove through it to find somewhere fun to go. That's kind of what our claim to fame is, I'm pretty sure. But I have a first and second graders at my building. I have 9 teachers. I've been in administration for about 7 years now. Prior to that, I started my career as a kindergarten teacher. I went into technology after that. And so I was a tech integration specialist for our district and then went into administration. And kind of where I started with this teacher data hub was kind of my first year as a principal. That was kind of when MTSS was just starting to kind of get a foothold in Nebraska, and they were starting to kind of push that across the state. And so what I found out is that data was being collected in our building, but it wasn't ever getting to teachers, so they couldn't see it. And so where it really started for me was with our progress monitoring. So we used Dibbles at the time, and our students who were identified as struggling as readers were being progress monitored weekly, but that data was never getting to teachers until reports were run after the big assessment time. And so nobody really knew how they were doing, if the interventions that we were putting in place were working or if they weren't working. And so I thought we need to fix that somehow, and it needs to be easy, because I've also noticed that teachers just didn't get onto the Dibbles website. It was another place that they had to go look. They had to go find the report that they were looking for. They couldn't remember how to do it because they just didn't do it very often. And so I thought we got to do this easier. And so I came up with a Google spreadsheet. And so this right here, what you're looking at, is my actual South Teacher Data Hub. You'll notice that I have squiggles here for names, just to keep the confidentiality. I found a really cool Google font to do that so that I can actually show you my real data without having to compromise any names. And so any of these squiggles here, just know that those are student names. So this very first page that I have here, and I kind of want to walk you through all of the tabs that I have at the bottom. So please feel free, if you have any questions, to kind of throw those into the chat. And I can try to address those as much as I possibly can. But and if I go too fast, just let me know. But this front page here, this is our Sundays. We do a program called Sunday Phonics. And I want our progress monitoring also on there because we use Acadience now, not Dibbles. And so we have a couple of things on here. The first thing you're going to see is our kind of our control board. This is a couple of purposes. This, for one, is to check pacing. We don't do like a walk to read or a leveled reading. We do it all by homeroom, and it's heterogeneous, but there are occasionally times when a student doesn't fit within that group. And so we can kind of shift them around if possible. And this is a way for teachers to check their pacing. So this level that shows up here, this is actually the last lesson that they completed on a mastery check. And a mastery check is done every 5 lessons. This data that comes in here, it comes from this mastery check spreadsheet. I don't have this one confidential as I'd show you, but it basically has just a list of student names. The teacher will put in the score for whatever they got on each level. And then the last level that shows up, it actually goes into a control board spreadsheet, which then comes into here. So the information that you see right here, if I can pull this up here, I'm actually using just an import range formula. So I have this all on a different spreadsheet where it keeps it all, and keeps all the contact, all the information all compiled. And then what I do is I just import that range in here. So you can't actually type on any of this stuff. If you do try to type to change this, it just all goes away. It's kind of a nice little security system, so people can't get in there and change things on their own. And so that's kind of one way that I've got that here. You're going to notice now too that I have all of these names are all color coded. Well, that has to do with our score sheet. So these are our main score sheets that we have. We have all of our Acadience scores up along the top, and then we have our MAP scores over here. And our MAP percentiles, they're all color coded. This is just a simple conditional formatting that I have. And so the red is from 0 to 20, orange is from 20 to 40, yellow is from 40 to 60, green is 60 to 80, and then blue is 80 and above. And I have those all color coded like that. And so then when you look at this, you're going to see our percentiles. And the reason for that was also strategic. In our action plans that we create, we target a certain group, which is our orange and yellow students, the ones that are kind of below that 50th percentile, but on a cusp of getting up a little higher. We target those students and we call them our super group kids. And so I want our teachers to see who the super group kids are all the time. They check this particular tab weekly, so you always know who your kids are. You don't forget them. Just because a kid is quiet or you think they have it, our super group kids are kids we don't do anything extra for. We might have them in interventions, but more than likely what's happening is I just want the teacher to know that they get an individual turn all the time, or I'm always checking their independent work as we're walking around the room. So those color codings are important for that. So that just comes straight from our score sheet. So we have our scores that are all entered into here. This is also in import range. This comes from our master assessment. So again, there's only 2 people that can enter scores on here or change scores. So that comes in here. It's very secure. So I don't have a teacher that will change a goal without us knowing about it. You can't go in and change test scores. You can't do any of those things. So that's kind of our control board. Now, as you get a little lower, if I go down here, all of my teachers have their names up here. And if they click on their name, it's just a hyperlink to a different spot on this spreadsheet. This is where you actually can drill it down per student. So I have a drop-down menu here. When a student's name gets selected, their scores come up, okay? And this is just a pretty simple query formula is what I've used here. So what it does is it's going to find this name in this would be our second grade scores tab, and it's going to look for column 21 when this column matches this name right here. It's going to pull up that number. So we get our fall scores, we get our winter scores in both ELA and math. And then we also get the Acadian scores. And in second grade, we don't do the full Acadians, we just do the oral reading fluency for second grade. What also they're going to see is they're going to see their progress monitor scores. So this is where these scores were never seen by teachers, and I wanted them to be seen, and I wanted them to be seen well. So we have their scores here, and then we have an ambitious growth line as well. So you'll see this graph that matches that. So what our teachers can do is they can just quickly click on the drop down, pick all of their students, take a very quick look at this graph, and you can obviously tell by looking at this in a couple of seconds, is this student making adequate growth or if they're not. This student here is a decent trajectory. They're definitely making growth. The red line is kind of where we want them to be at to hopefully make up and catch up to where they should be. And then I also kind of superimpose that Sunday mastery check down here as well too, so they can kind of get an idea, are these scores dipping and these scores dipping? Then I know where I can change my instruction from. So they have that for each of their students. If I scroll down to the next teacher here, you can see another one here. This is a great example of this student here is making ambitious growth. Based off of where we want them to be, though, we would like them to be a little bit higher, but their trajectory is still very good, which shows that they are responding well to interventions. And I could see that by just glancing at this graph very quickly. So it limits our teachers' time that they spend looking at data and finding data, which is where I found that we were kind of lax in. If you don't have systems in place that are easy, that make it simple, that you don't have a lot of extra work to do, then the teachers will look at that and they'll see that. And so my teacher data hub is all about automaticity. I don't want somebody to have to put scores in somewhere and then copy them to several other places. It should all just work for itself, which it does. So this is our progress monitoring, and that's kind of where I started at. What I found, though, as I moved on through my administration career, is that every year I found, well, I kind of want my teachers to know this too. I want them to see this data. We collect this, they should see this as well. And so every year I've tweaked or added or improved this data hub to the point where it is at right now. And I also have some ideas for next year, which I'll share here kind of at the end. So what I want to show, and also what goes with this. So this part here, this tab is checked weekly by my teachers because every week there's new data that's entered. We have a progress monitor score that's added every single week. So that's how often they get on and they just check that. And like I said, it's about a very quick 15 minutes at most, and you've probably seen all of your students and know exactly where they're at. How this has changed our MTSS and made it more proactive is instead of our teachers waiting for that 6 to 8 week meeting that we used to have, now it's happening all the time. Our MTSS is fluid. We have teachers that meet during recess. We have teachers that meet after school or during plan time throughout the week. They see the data. They know exactly where students are at. They know if they're responding and they know if they're not responding. And they take action on that because our teachers want to do that. They want them to succeed. I don't think I've ever had a teacher that just sits back and says, well, they're not doing great, so well, I can't do anything about it. No, they're going to be proactive and they're going to take care of it. And that's what's changed our MTSS. So prior to this, prior to our data kind of getting under control and kind of building that data culture in our building, we had MTS meetings that lasted a long time, with meetings about each student that lasted 10 to 15 minutes, where we were always catching up on what we've done and trying to get ahead and just never getting there. Our list kept getting longer and longer, to the point where we're at now, where we spend a maximum of 5 minutes on a student. And that is not trying to figure out what to do, but more about recapping what we've done and if they're responding and how well they're responding. And our list gets shorter and shorter each year because we can take a look very quickly at a graph and see this student is responding to interventions. We don't need to meet on them. We all know that they're doing and making adequate progress. So the next thing I want to share with you, I'm going to skip over to my check-in and attendance. This was something that is fairly new. Actually put it in just this year. So this year we came up with our SEL kind of a goal of having a daily check-in for students. And so students every single day, again, I have first and second graders. So on an iPad, they go to a Google form, and in that form, they click one of these feelings that they're feeling that day with a little emoji that goes with it. And then they just submit that in. So they have their name, that they have to find in a list, and then they have to tell me whether they're feeling worried, sad, tired, mad and angry, happy, excited, or content for that day coming in the morning. I think you kind of all can understand the benefits of something like this, but a lot of times we had students who were coming in, they just weren't expressing their feelings, and their feelings instead got expressed by them shutting down, refusing to work, being in a grumpy mood. And again, they just didn't communicate that. So teachers were not understanding what was going on. And so we implemented this daily check-in this year and had some fantastic results. We did it right at the very start of the year, kind of slowly got it in. But when teachers get on here, this is something they check every single day. They'll see an overall list of how many. Of course, we don't have school right now, so we have zeros here, but you would see a list of how many kids in the entire school marked as worried, sad, tired, mad, angry, all these things. It would be a comparison of the day before. So we would have, if this were an actual day, you would actually see yesterday's information or data that we had. And then you can also see an average per day each month. And so as you take a look at our data that we had, we started the year with about 4 kids coming in worried for about the first 3 months of school, 4 months of school. And then it slowly kept coming down and down. Same with sad, same with tired, mad kids kind of stayed around that 1 or 2. Our happy kids got higher, our content kids seemed about the same, but we were able to kind of see those trends because of awareness. And that's all it was just awareness. We had a lot of kids who were coming to school saying that they were tired every day. We send a parent report home, which I'll show you here in a minute and what that looks like. But parents were able to have conversations with them. We had some parents that found out that their child was watching TV after bedtime, after they had gotten tucked in. We had others that were just marking that they were tired every day, but their bedtime was 8 o'clock and they went to bed every night at 8 o'clock. And so that conversation happened with them. Are you really that tired? Do you need to go to bed any earlier? And so those conversations happened, which was fantastic. They wouldn't have happened without that kind of awareness piece brought in there. And then not only that, but then our teachers had an idea of what was going on with the student. And so how that broke down, I have more information here. So this was our yearly information. I kept track of all of that stuff. This is all kind of basic things. A percentage of days of the week. You can kind of see that our Monday, we had the most kids tired. I don't think anybody's surprised by that. But as the week progressed, they got happier. So it's just kind of interesting to kind of see trends where you think they might be and where they actually are. So as a teacher, you would see this main dashboard, which kind of shows the whole school, but then down below, this is where you would actually see your students. And so I have a drop down. You can click any student that you want. You would get a historical record starting from the most recent and then going down of what this student has typically checked in as. So you can see kind of some trends and some patterns. Over here, you would be able to see if a student has checked in or not. So if they checked in, it'd actually be green. Of course, these are all red because we're not in school. So if a student was red and they were there, the teacher could say, hey, you forgot to go check in. Go ahead and do it. But then here in this column, this was where it was really powerful. Any student that marked that they were worried, sad, upset, any of those things that would pop in over here. And so then a teacher could quickly see a short list of students that they have to check in with. And they would do that, maybe prior to the recess or during a recess or just quickly if they had some downtime right away. We tried not to start any heavy academics until around 20 minutes after students got in, so they would have enough time to get a check-in. But that kind of came to be a big, big thing for us because the teachers were able to know what was going on with kids. Another part of this was our principal counselor part. So over here on the side, we would have, so my counselor and I would check this list also every day. Any student that marked that they were worried or mad and angry, we felt probably needed another person to check in with them because it might be something a little bit bigger. And so these names would pop up if they said that they were worried, if they said that they were mad. And then we had check boxes over here. So what would happen is so that we weren't just bombarding a kid. If my counselor found somebody and checked in with them, she would just put a check there. So then I knew that person's already been checked in. I don't need to go check on that student. And then every day I have a little script that runs and it wipes those clean so I don't have to do that. So again, automaticity is big with this stuff. You have to try to make things automatic so that you don't forget. It just does it for you. So that's my daily check-in. Like I said, the teachers checked this every single day on this one. I have quite a few hidden tabs that are in here. So this is just what the teachers see. This spreadsheet is pretty big. So I've got quite a few other things in here. So I've got like a daily check-in master. That's where the majority of this data comes. And then what you see on this page is it kind of being filtered. But if you look here, like I've got a couple, this is a query formula that I have. So it looks up this name on our check-in master that's on this, and it finds a couple of columns for me. Same thing with this one here, though this goes off of class lists. So my secretary runs the master class list. So I have anywhere where I have lists of students, it's tied to that. So when she makes changes to it, it automatically changes it here. Again, it's got to be automatic. Otherwise, it's not going to get done, right? We get a new student in, it should be ready to roll as soon as that student is added to the roster rather than having to wait. Let's see here. We have another query. This one also looks up the same stuff. It just finds a certain date that it's looking for, and it's looking for these hot button words here. One thing that you should keep in mind if you are doing a Google form and you're trying to sort data, if you want something specific, make it a drop down or something like that, because if a student has to type it in, these things are always case sensitive. There's going to be misspellings. So if you're looking to sort data by something and you're setting up your Google form, make it a drop down. Do that for student names. Make it a drop down for student names, because kids will type their name in, they'll put lowercase letters, or they'll just put their first name or just their last name, or they'll put it and they'll smush it together, and then you can't sort that stuff. So that's one little thing that I found as I'm making these spreadsheets, is that you really need to make sure you limit the variables, especially when you're trying to sort and look for data that's coming in. So if I'm looking for these specific things, those are actual choices. That's a multiple choice question. The kids can't type that in. So as you get into older grades, obviously those kids can type a lot more, but you're going to get those variables that are going to kind of mess it up and make it hard to sort. I got a couple of things here. Okay, good. Yeah, so that's our daily check-in, and I could probably go like a whole 50 minutes on this one alone. I'd love to spend more time on it, and I'd be happy to stick around if you want to afterwards. So the next one I want to show you is our behavioral data. And by the way, this information, this is all student inputted. So the teachers do none of it. The teachers do no inputting of data. All they have to do is just get on here and find it. It's as easy as it possibly can be for them, so that they make sure that happens. They don't have to put any data in. The students do it all themselves. And so I just want to get a system set up to sort it for them. So as I go over to the behavioral data, this is another one. So this is a student here who's maybe one of those kids that comes down and visits the principal's office maybe quite a few times. And so you can kind of see, I'm sure everybody's got a couple of those that are in there. But this information here, this is actually going to be inputted by either myself, my counselor, possibly my resource teacher. She sometimes helps out with behavior things as well. So just the people that actually are removing a student. So if a student has to be removed for whatever reason, I keep track of all of that just so we have an idea, a date stamp, a time that they came in, a time that they came out, how they were feeling prior to coming in, how they were feeling after they left. I'm going to drill this down to see how many times a student has visited me, how many total minutes they've been in what we call our ownership room. If they had to do ownership room tasks, how many tasks have they had to do? And just kind of that total amount, an average time that they spent in there. So every 21 times this student has come to me, he spends about 10 minutes and then we're ready to go back. This is a kid who can process very quickly. He can de-escalate very quickly. We can get back into the classroom and be successful pretty fast. So this, again, this is a Google form that I have filled out. I have a nice little drop down of different why he has to come down. Sometimes it's just a calm down, just a sensory room calm down. Sometimes it's ownership room. He was asked to go. Sometimes he just needed a different space to do some classwork. Lots of different ideas or ways that you can kind of do that in. It kind of goes different in each school. But again, this is kind of another thing that you can look at and sort. The formula on this one's pretty easy. This is just a query formula as well. It comes from another spreadsheet that I have imported in, and I just pull certain columns that I want teachers to be able to see. On top of this, I have a nice little report that I can share home. This report here is, I'm actually going to go down because this is a second grade student. This is a report I can print off and I can send home. So it has all of the scores in here because academics and behavior, hey, they're hand in hand, right? If we're being removed from the classroom all the time because we're just not wanting to work or whatever, our academics are going to suffer. So we want to be able to see those results there. I can change the reporting period. So if I want this to be first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter, what that does is it sorts the amount of time. So these right here are just fourth quarter incidents. So I don't need to send home the first quarter stuff. If I'm sending a report home for parents, they should just be able to see what's recently happened. And then also having a little idea here of a little bar graph of how many times they visited in each month. And so you can see we had a little bit of a rough patch right here, but then got much better. And then of course, as the end of the year kind of came up, those started to kind of spike back up again. And so that's one of the reports that I have that goes home for parents off of behavioral stuff, which is kind of, I think, a big area where we can always grow in communication. I mean, obviously we have the communication that happens the day of, but we want to see some trends and we want to see some patterns and have a good talking point for that. I do want to back up, and I kind of forgot to share this. This is our daily check-in report that gets sent home from parents. So going back to my daily check-in, this is sent home monthly. And so you'll see this is just a template in Google Sheets or Google Slides, I'm sorry. And what I have these like little weird things here because I use an add-on called Autocrat. And so I've created my template. And then on Autocrat, it will look for all of these headers on a spreadsheet that's on my daily check-in master. And then what it does is it will print off a report to create a PDF for me for every student. It'll put their homeroom name on there. It will put all of their data in here for me. It will put their total data here for me. And then we have a couple of spots for feedback. So teachers can write some feedback on here. Parents can also write feedback as well too. And this has been very helpful for us. We've had a couple of times where, something has happened and parents sometimes just forget to tell you like the obvious things. Oh, we just had a grandparent that just died and this kid's been super sad the last month and we had no clue that this happened and they were very close to this grandparent. So this has been an area we could kind of open that communication. They had a lot going on at home. They didn't even think to tell the schools. They didn't even think that would make a difference in school. And so then when they see those reports coming home that, wow, my kid has been tired way more than they have all year, or they've been worried or sad, I should have probably told them about this. And so those kinds of things have been also super, super helpful. So that's been kind of a nice thing. to do. So let me jump back in and then we back up even more here. So I want to show you off of this daily check-in. I do this for all of our schools. This is one area that they kind of adapted this as well. This is an upper elementary one though. So this is a 5th, 6th grade building. They do things a little bit differently. They use the zones of regulation for their check-ins. They don't use the actual feelings, which is great. So they actually just have their colors that are here. Okay. But the cool thing is that these teachers, obviously students can say a little bit more than what our elementary students can. They can type in responses. And so in this 6th grade class here, she has a form that has multiple questions on it. So she has a question here that says, I am blank because blank, how did you sleep last night? Did you eat breakfast? Like some of those good information to have that is very easy for an upper elementary or even a secondary student to put in. And then that comes in just the same way. It's just extra columns. She also wanted her groupings to be organized by this character. So she would ask what she needs from her teacher, and she would have things like, I need a fist bump. I'd like a hug. I don't need anything. I'm good. A high five would be great. And she wanted to sort that so she could make sure she checked in with those kids. And so I created just a simple macro and created a button on that. If you've never done a macro before, they're super easy. It's a matter of like clicking a button, doing the actions you want, and then stopping it, and it records that as an action. So if you click on this button here, it would actually sort all of these students by that column. So she could do that each and every day since that data changes. But that's kind of an upper elementary, which was kind of nice. This is also very easy to change. If they didn't want to, it's like, so some of the teachers actually had, some like more relevant to the time period. So like, what are your Thanksgiving plans or whatever that happens to be. So they would change some of these questions. As long as they kept that same question in the Google form and they just changed the wording of that question, that would update right here. So you could do that as well too. And I could get into some of that stuff, but then it gets really deep. The biggest thing to take away from this is that if you want to do something, you can. It's very easy to do. Like I'm not very good at formulas. I'm not very good at coding, but I've made this all work. I've kind of figured it all out. And I'll show you my cheat sheet here in just a little bit when we get kind of more towards the end. So all you really need to do is just know what you want. Like, I want this. More than likely, if you can get information into a Google spreadsheet, you can do whatever you want with it. That's kind of been my big takeaway from this. So if I jump back in here, sorry for jumping around a little bit, the check-in attendance thing has kind of been a huge one. I would really love to use it as attendance. We just didn't have the good, solid enough, accurate data that came in each and every day. But really, you can use it for attendance simply. If a student doesn't check in a day, they're gone. So you have that. And so instead of having to, for us, pull it from PowerSchool, you can just pull it from your Google spreadsheet that you look at each and every day anyways, and you can get an idea of that. So the next thing that I want to go to, I didn't even cover all the stuff on here. I tell you what, there's like Easter eggs hidden all over this thing. I love data, and I obviously I'm sure you figured out, but I also love just kind of keeping track of things and then comparing. So what I've done here is, and all this does is this part right here looks at all of the data that comes in, okay, and it finds it. And what it does is I have an array formula, and it's going to count if anytime, however many times I did an entry on that form in the month of August. And so in August, I had 12 entries. And then September, I had 17. October, I had 42. And then what it does is it drills it down. So 19 of those were ownership room, 5 were office referrals, 3 were sensory calm downs, and then 11 times students just needed a quiet place to work. And so I can kind of keep track of that. So in October, we had a great point of data to talk about with our staff and say, hey, why are we having so many students needing an alternative placement for some of their day? And we kind of could break it down and talk about what was going on in classrooms, what teachers were seeing. And it led to some great things because you can see the trend in November and December went way down. And it wasn't just because they just said, oh, Mr. Meyer's tired of them, so I can't send him anymore. It was truly us being proactive with this instead of just being reactive. And then it kind of got better. And then in January, spiked up a little bit, and we kind of leveled off. March and April, if you're a teacher, March and April, they're tough months. We have a lot of days off. As the weather starts getting nice, it's just hard. If you can see compared to last year, because I like to compare things, last year we were at 27 and 40 in April, 20 in May. So we did a better job of being proactive and staying in front of those things, which was kind of nice. We also have some students who do a daily check-in, check-out sheet. So we are a PBIS school, and kind of one of those components is a check-in, check-out. So we have a couple of students here. They're just really struggling, need that structure. This is also a Google spreadsheet. We have that data that's entered in every day. So the person that checks out with that student is going to put how many points they earned on that spreadsheet. That all kind of comes over here. So a teacher can quickly see my student right here and then the last 15 days. Because when you're talking about behavior stuff, really the last 15 days is what you want to look at. You want to see if is it working? Are we doing things right? If we have a big meeting, then we can definitely look at more of it. But for that quick snapshot, I just want to see the last 15 days. Like, has it been good or not? So you can see the student did a pretty good job. These days they were gone. So they really only had one day that they didn't meet their goal. Their goal was 80%, just barely missed that goal with about 1 point off. And then we have other students down here too. Here's another example here. This student here, not as successful. This one was just put on that check-in, check-out sheet. And so we were still kind of transitioning into like those expectations and kind of that follow through with it. Very different. This is a little bit more intense. And so we had way more opportunities, like way more frequency for points. So this person's point total was much higher. And then this person was kind of on the end of transitioning kind of out of that. So next year when she comes back, it'll be kind of that thing. We'll just continue to almost be transitioned out of because we are being very successful for the most part of the day. So that's kind of our behavioral data that we have. This gets checked kind of on an as needed basis. So if we're doing MTSS meetings, we want to look at it, we'll look at it then. If you have a student here that's like, gosh, it seems like I'm sending them out all the time, you could take a look at that. We could do whole group PD, and we do that about every other month or so. We could take a look at our behavioral data. So this is not one that's a frequent, but it's very good to have when you need it. So next up, this is like my passion here. So this one's one I have had the most fun with and I've done the most creative things with. But so as a PBIS school, we have a school-wide incentive. It's called Raider Badges. And Raider Badges are just simply like a little 1-inch button, and that's all it is. It's based off of gamification. If you've done things with badges before, you probably know a little bit about that. But it's a physical badge that's earned from students. And so in the classroom, teachers what we have is if you get 5 tallies under a certain heading, then you can get a badge. Or if you've met your like weekly Zern math goal, then you can get a badge. And so like a teacher might say, hey, that's an excellent job. Go put a tally for a math whiz. And then they would go over on their spot in their room and they would put a little tally. And once they get to 5, they tell their teacher, oh, I earned a math whiz badge. And then they would come down with a little slip of paper. And then once you earn 1 badge, you can earn it again. You get a level 2 Raider badge. And so then you get a same badge and it has a little number 2 on it. And then it goes to number 3 and then it goes to 4 and then it just keeps on going for as many that they've earned. And you can see we did a lot of badges. I made a lot of badges last year. We had 5,804 badges that the students were able to earn, which is very cool. What I love to do about this though is really break it down. And so we have like a little leaderboard that goes here, and I'm actually going to switch to this. So most of this, as I told you, I do a lot with import ranges. And so I will have a lot of this stuff built on a separate spreadsheet, and then I'll import it in. And the reason I've done that is because my spreadsheet has become too cumbersome. I've had to like pare it down a couple of times because it wouldn't load for teachers. I'm really kind of maxing out like what one spreadsheet can do, but it's so important to have everything on one. So I do a lot of the heavy lifting on other spreadsheets, and then I maybe will just import a range in to see. So like this one right here, this is an import range. It comes from this other spreadsheet. So I'm basically just grabbing a snapshot of a tab over there and bringing it in here. So I'm not doing all the extra stuff on this because like I said, it was taking a long time to load. So if I jump over to my XP counter, I have a digital board that's up in our lobby. So every parent who comes in can kind of get an idea of who's earned the most Raider badges, what badges we've earned the most for, how many badges we've earned. And then we always do a countdown to a fun day. So we had Rubber Duck Day at the end of school. And so it's pretty simple stuff. Usually it's just me in an inflatable costume greeting kids in the morning and running through the school. And then they get a little trinket of some sort. But just an idea for them to kind of get a chance to see that. So that's put up on our website and also in our lobby. And then we have a couple of little places that we can break it down. So this actually shows a bigger breakdown. This is where I'd like to compare data. So this shows of how many badges we've earned this year, how many badges we earned last year, and in comparison to. And then this is a breakdown of all of our students, and then that kind of that top placing. This is a very cool place too. This is all of the badges that were earned. So like this goes down like thousands and thousands of lines, like 5,800 lines, right? And then over here, this happens all the time. I have a student that comes to me, they said, hey, I got a Math Whiz badge, but I can't remember what level I am. I can type their name in and I can find any badge that they've earned. And so I said, oh yeah, last one you had was a level 5. So this is probably a level 6. And so then we can kind of figure some of that stuff out instead of them kind of being lost. And so you can see the student here has earned quite a few badges. And like I said, they're first and second graders, so sometimes we put the same level on. So this student had the level 2 twice, the level 3, 2 twice, but those are the little details that don't matter too much. This is the part here that I really, really liked, and this was awesome. So we have a board, or like a wall, and what I like to do is when a kid makes 10 badges, I'll take their picture, I'll cut out a picture of their head, and I'll put it up on the wall, and then as they continue on, I'll move them over so we can kind of get an idea. This works twofold. For one, the kids love to see themselves up there on the wall. And then two, it's a very kind of subtle peer pressure for teachers to make sure we're implementing this and not forgetting about it. We want to recognize students. And so if you happen to see none of your students up there, oh yeah, I need to amp it up. I need to make sure that I'm recognizing student achievement here. So it kind of works twofold. The one thing that's nice about this, and this is what's really cool, is that for a while I was just going in. So this is the form that's linked to a sheet. So Mrs. Ballou is a second grade teacher. All of her students, anytime they enter a form or enter a Google form for their badge, it shows up right here. So I have date stamps, I have names, and I have the badge that they earned and what level it was. And so this is all student entered data. Teachers don't enter any of this data in. All they have to do is just recognize student achievement and tell them to go mark a tally, and then write on a piece of paper when they earn 5 and they come down to my office. Very little work, easy to implement, okay? So what I was having to do is go through this list. This was all the students, and this would tally up how many badges they earned. And then I was having to write down, like literally write down each level that they got to, and then I would have to color code them so I knew I already got them. It was super tedious. And just like I said, if something's not automatic and easy, it becomes hard to continue to replicate and make it a pattern. And I was falling behind. So I was doing this about every 2 weeks, and I'd have 45 kids that I needed to move over. And, the kids were starting to say, hey, Mr. Meyer, I've got 35 badges. I haven't moved yet. And, so trying to keep track of that was hard. So I came up with an idea. And again, this is where I really want to break this down to. You can do anything you want with the data. I got the data in here. So what I did was transferred names. This is just a very quick query. It looks up all the names. Boom, puts all the names there. And then what it's going to do is it's going to look up how many badges that student has earned. Okay. Then if it's greater than 10, I want that number to pop up right here. If it's greater than 10 and it pops up here, then I want a date timestamp that's going to show up. And let me show you one that actually is not there. So this is going to be an if statement. So this is if this shows up right here, if this is basically what this says. If there's something that shows up here, I want you to put today's timestamp right now. So I can tell you exactly to the minute when most of these were earned. Okay. What was happening though, and so then this is the next step. It would do all of that. And then as I scrolled clear over here to the side, I had one column right here with the date, okay? Except for this is yesterday's date. So I did a today -1. So yesterday's date, it would find any student who had, it would look in this query here, and it would find anybody who had a date stamp later than yesterday, and it would give me a list of names. So just as an example here, I'm going to overwrite that with this date instead. This is the list of students that earned whatever level after the 5th of May. And then I have a script that would email me this list every day. So then every day, all I do is check an email, walk over, I'd move 5 or 6 kids, and then I would be on track on time the whole time. The problem that happened though, was because this form is too big, what was happening is like this column here was like flickering. So like it would go away and then it would come back, and then my date stamp would be off because it would then update and it would change it to the next day. So I was getting an email list of like tons of kids every day that I already moved. So my solution, and this is where I started getting smart with trying to create this stuff. I don't know anything about Google scripts. They're hard for me. Like coding is not easy. It's challenging, but it's not challenging for ChatGPT. So I went into ChatGPT and I said, here, I need help with sheets. I have a formula with the date stamp and it has a cell that's adjacent and it gets data. I want a macro or conditional formatting to make sure it shows up. And then what I want it to do is I want it to copy and paste the value. So I had that formula that was always looking. What happens is when I want a timestamp to go in there, I want it to copy and just paste the value only so there's no more formula and there's no more flickering. And so when I did that, it came back and said, well, we can't do that with a macro and you can't do that with conditional formatting, but here's a script for you. Try this script out. So I tried this script, didn't quite work. I had to give it more information. And then it came back and I had to give it more information. And then, hey, look, we got that fixed. Got it all ready to go right about here. This actually worked. So I just had a couple of questions, right? And then I put in specific ranges. I said, here's the range I want it to look for. And I want it to look for this sheet. And so it put all of that information, because I'm honest with you, I don't know any of this stuff. I mean, I have very, very basic knowledge about some of this stuff. No clue how to write any of this. It wrote it all for me. I copied it. I pasted it into a script. I ran it. It worked. And so then I said, hey, I got to do this for a lot more ranges. And so then I had to add the ranges in. It did it for me. I copied it. I pasted it in. I ran it. It worked. And then I just put a time trigger on it to make it run every single day at about like 1 o'clock in the morning and send me an email at 7 o'clock every morning that says, here's your kids. And that's all I did. And it did this in like an hour. I got that problem solved. When I was first starting on this data hub, I'd have to go through forums. I'd have to go look and search and Google and re-Google and try to change it again. I just go to ChatGPT and say, hey, this is what I want. And it comes back and it works. It's fantastic. And so that's the part that changed it for me, because I'm a not knowledgeable guy when it comes to coding. That was deep for me. Like I can do formulas. I can figure that out pretty well. But the ChatGPT is what actually saved me, and it made my job so much easier. So now when I do this, this is what you'll see is some of these right here. Whoops, I'm over too far. There we go. So these badges that pop up here now, those are just static values, which is awesome. So like this right here, this timestamp, it's not a formula anymore. But in the blanks, you'll see there's the formula. So every time a new date were to pop up, it would run and it would just copy paste that data, and it just fixed it for me, which is so great. So you can see I have a lot of like, these are all the same dates, because I kind of worked over this for a couple of months trying to figure out my problem. And then I finally figured out I should just go to ChatGPT and ask it to do it for me, and figure this out. And it did, which was amazing. So that's big. So that's what I would say. If you don't know what you're doing on Google Forms or Google Sheets, like, don't worry about it. Just go in there and ask. There's been so many times I'm like, hey, I need a formula that does this, and it'll pop it back for me and say, use this formula, and be specific and say, I want a formula that does this. I want it to find it off of this sheet. I want it to look in this range, and it just dang near writes the whole thing exactly how you need it, which has been fantastic for me. So this page here, I'm going to jump back, going back into my data hub. It's hard. It's easy to do bird walks on this stuff here. So the Rater badge page is actually checked monthly. I don't want them to do it all the time, just monthly, just to check in, mainly to find the kids that you just forget about. You know, the kids that are just doing everything they're supposed to do, and they're kind of quiet in the back. And all of a sudden you realize, wow, I haven't recognized them at all. That's kind of what it's meant for. So if I show you here, so if I click on this Mrs. Blue's spreadsheet here, this is what she can see. She can see all of her kids, how many badges they've earned, what badges she's given out, a total number of badges she's done, and then she can also drill it down by student, and she can also see what students have earned what badges. And so some of our teachers, and this is what's great about this program, is you can use whatever you want. If Good Friend is a badge that sticks for you, you use the heck out of it. If a super student badge is what works for you, then use the heck out of that. You don't have to use all of them. Find the ones that work for you. And so this is, you know, some of them are academic, some of them are behavioral, some of them are growth mindset stuff, SEL stuff. It's kind of whatever they want. But you can kind of see this. And they're the only ones that can see this page. I'm really big about our data hub being seen by everybody, because everybody works with kids and everybody should have an idea of where to go with it. We're all professionals. We have a confidentiality talk at the beginning of the year. It's never become an issue. It never will be an issue, because our staff care too much about kids, but they should see the data. The only time I have it limited is in here because I don't want it to be competitive, and I don't want our teachers to feel pressured to give out too many. I tell them all, however many badges you give out is the right number of badges. It doesn't matter if your neighbor across the hall has given out twice as many as you use what works. And so I don't want that to be lost in a competition where we're just throwing out badges to just get a number. So I can truly feel confident that out of this 5,804 badges, 5,804 of them were earned by kids. And I have that data to show that, which is super fantastic. Definitely something I like. Now, our last thing that I want to show you, this is our freckle intervention. So this is our digital learning curriculum. We're actually switching from freckle. We're going to something called ScoopPad next year, which we used to use in the past. But what I want to share with you is this one. This is a pretty easy one too. This is data that is put in by para. So we have a paraprofessional who works with specific classes. We try to keep them kind of matched up. And then what they do is they're a co-teacher, so they can go in and find concepts or standards that students are struggling with. And when they do, they can assign some interventions for that student. They can also work with that student, and they can kind of help them through a process if they're struggling. So this is, again, a little drop down, so you can pick any student you want. This student here happened to have this many interventions put in place with the standard that goes along with it. So again, the para puts in the student, they put in what the standard was and when they did it, and that's it. And then it comes to the teacher. And then what happens is that this gets broken down so that you can see what standard has been assigned the most amount of times. And then also what standard has been assigned the most in your class. So this particular teacher can see that this standard, which has to do with measuring, was assigned 19 times. That definitely means that this is a struggle for these kids that are in her class, and that this is a kindergarten standard. She's teaching first grade. So this is a standard that has been missed somewhere in there, and frequently enough that we should probably do something about. And so in our math meeting, we might put an activity in there that has to do with measuring. And then you can kind of see which one was second most common and then third most common. So we can kind of get ahead of that. And so obviously, if it's been assigned that many times, yeah, then that's probably a full class thing that we can have a discussion about. So that's our freckle intervention piece that goes in there. This one too, let's see. I think I have a query on this one, and I think I also have some. This is an index match that I have, a VLOOKUP. Those are some of the big ones. So queries, input range, VLOOKUP, and HLOOKUP. If I go over to my first grade scores over here, actually, no, not the first grade scores. Let me show you an example of an HLOOKUP or a VLOOKUP. There's one right there. So like our progress monitor scores, there's a spreadsheet that has all of our scores. I use an HLOOKUP for that one. I mean, there's just a lot of nice little formulas that you can use to find things and to kind of put them in a place where they can actually be used and sorted and put in a way that teachers can see them quickly and easily. So that was probably the fastest I have ever talked to get through our entire data hub. So I know I threw probably a whole bunch out at you. Hopefully you're able to see something. But the biggest takeaways that I'd like for you to have is mainly think about the data that you collect in a school and think about the data that needs to be in teachers' hands easily. And that's where you start. For me, it was progress monitoring, and then it just branched off from there. Like I said, this has taken me about 7 years to get to the point where it is right now, with a little bit of fixing here and there. It would have been way faster had ChatGPT been a thing 7 years ago, because I would have gotten way faster with some of this stuff and put way more in, and it wouldn't have taken me months to get some of this stuff kind of put together. But if you have things in a Google spreadsheet, you can do whatever you want with it. That's what I found out. You can do whatever you want if you can get it into a spreadsheet. And Forms is the fastest and quickest and easiest way of doing it. So what I love about this data hub is that the only information that teachers put in themselves is this mastery check, and that's it. Everything else is done for them, but it's given to them in a very nice, easy little package here. Moving forward, where I'm kind of wanting to go is this spreadsheet is also, because of all of our daily check-in information, because of our behavior data, because of our rater badges, it's just so much data, it really bogs this down. And again, if towards the end of the year, it was taking about 10 minutes for some teachers to load this. So they would start it, go make a couple copies, and they'd come back, and then maybe it might be loaded so that they could actually look at it. What I would like to do next is I would like to utilize Autocrat more to create reports, or a Google script to be able to email a report to a teacher on those specified times. So if I want weekly data and I want them to see their most recent progress monitor scores, I want an email with those students with their scores sent to them. Or monthly, I want them to check their rater badge data. I want that email to be sent to them so they don't even have to check it. They just get that report. Here it is, right there in your lap. We have all the spreadsheet stuff all ready to go. And then they just have it. So that's kind of our next step. That's my next step as far as next year and where this all goes. So I do have a question here about where can I learn more about how to do this? That's a great question. I tell you what, I'm a self-learner. I just kind of taught myself how to do this stuff. I found a problem and I went after it. I think that there's a lot of people out there that can do this sort of thing. I think there's a lot of places that can do this sort of thing. I am happy to meet with anybody. I'll kind of show you my information that's right here. If you'd like to reach out, please do. Send me an email. That's probably the best way of getting a hold of me. I've talked with a lot of other people about kind of a data hub and kind of the things that I've done. Like I said, it's pretty easy. It's pretty easy to create things once you get kind of a general grasp or general knowledge, but utilizing resources such as ChatGPT to just say, hi, I need to do this in Google Sheets. Can you help me? And it can do a great job of some of that stuff, especially when you're talking about formulas and organizing and kind of how to put that. But the biggest things I would recommend for you, if you're doing a Google form, make sure that you have static values for things that you want to sort. So if it's names, make it a dropdown. If it's options that you want to sort, make it a multiple choice or a dropdown. Because if it gets a little bit too confusing otherwise, and then you get duplications. Even in, I'm going to jump right back here really quick. Even in my behavior data, I type in names here and I mess it up. And so then I'll have duplicates all the time that I have to go back and check and change. But I also don't want to put 170 kids in a drop-down list. So I just kind of have to eat that mistake. But keeping things organized as best that you can. And then put some of that stuff in the back. Like I said, I have a ton of hidden spreadsheets that are in here. All of these light gray ones, these are all hidden spreadsheets. This is all data that comes in, that is sorted, that I pull forward. So there's a lot of stuff. And not only that, but even on my main tab here that I have, there's a lot of stuff that's hidden in here that you can't see. Over here, there's a bunch of hidden stuff that I have that allows this conditional formatting to happen. So it's messy and it's sometimes not efficient, but it gets the job done. And so I know that there's ways that I could probably do this better or more efficient, but what I have works. And so I just run with it. It's fine. I'm not doing the heavy lifting. Google's doing the heavy lifting, and they do it really, really great. So yeah, I also have in here too. Yeah, you could use a student number to populate the name with an XLOOKUP. That's just also a good idea to do that as well. Trying to make it as automatic as possible, though, that's the big thing. Make it easy, make it simple. If I have to copy and paste multiple things, it's just not going to continue. Like, I might be all about it to start with, but I've got to have it automatic. I got to have it do it for me so that I don't have to keep doing that stuff. We all get busy. We don't have the time to do that. So, well, I appreciate everybody sticking around, and hopefully you got something good out of this session. I'm happy to stick around if you want to jump off of mute and have a conversation. I'm great with that. If you just want to send me an email, I'm also great with that too. So I'd love to connect with somebody out there, especially if you're kind of wanting to kind of create something like this as well. But if not, thank you guys all for the time. I appreciate it. And good luck next school year. And we'll hopefully be in touch at some point.